I said, "Oh, okay, now we're recording." I said, well, um, I want to do something. And so I learned, long story short, I took Denise Ellsworth's courses in bees and bee identification and bee biology, and became fascinated with it. Um, and since then, I also took field courses with Dr. Olivia Carroll, and then I have helped with several research projects, and I'll talk about some of those as we go on. Um, so I'm going to start sharing my screen here, and let's see how this works. And looks like it's working.
Yep, looks good.
Except I don't see it. I don't see it on my screen. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll start again.
You
Okay.
may have gotten out of the app, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, there's that. And then I want to put it into screen mode. Ooh. Once again. Oh,
If you click forward, does it show up?
going to stop again and start again. Let's see. Oh,
Maybe it opened in presenter
for
mode.
some reason, that's. I want to do this one, and I want to share. Honest, folks, we practiced this beforehand, and it worked just fine. I'm clicking the screen icon, and it goes to black.
All right. Down at the bottom, if you move your arrow forward, does it do anything?
Well, that's okay. I'm going to start sharing again.
It looks like it's in presenter mode.
Yeah. Oh. Hmm. Well, usually I would click on the screen.
Try using the tab up top instead. The
Okay.
slideshow tab up top.
Where it says layout.
Oh, no, use at the beginning of yeah, up top of the app, file,
Yep.
home, start, draw, slideshow.
Okay.
Nope, a little further. Over and up.
Over and oh, I see. Slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah. From the beginning. All right. Yes. Thank you, Sheila.
You're welcome.
Okay. So the title of the talk really kind of gives you the whole idea of what I'm going to talk about. But my interest, as I was telling Sheila before, my interest as an ecosystem ecologist, which is how I used my biophysics as a way of looking at the generalities of nature. And one of the ecosystem functions really is how fast does energy get into the biosphere? And the answer is it's all solar energy, but in order to do that, it has to get into the primary producers. And in order to do that, to make fruits, the flowers need to be pollinated. So pollination is not just an incidental activity that we don't, we can study it if we're interested, but it's no big deal. Actually, one could make a case that it's as big a deal as you can find, because if we lose pollination activities, or if we constrain the pollination activities, we really constrain the amount of life that can be supported on Earth. Because almost all life depends on solar energy. And solar energy enters through the primary producers, the flowering plants. So, let's see here. Okay, what makes a good pollinator? Well, they have to be able to pick up pollen. And so what makes a good pollinator is if they're hairy, and especially if the hairs themselves are kind of feathery, so that they can attach pollen grains. And we know that the pollen and the hairs have opposite electric charges, so that the pollen grains really will stick to the hairs of the best pollinators. So a good pollinator would be something that's hairy and feathery, to which the pollen would stick. Also, a good pollinator would have to visit flowers, not just incidentally, but have to visit a lot of flowers and do it very frequently and do it very fast. Also, and of course, this is the important thing, they have to visit the flowers of the same species, because the pollination is transferring the pollen from the male part of a flower to the female part of the flower of the same species. And so while many pollinators like flies and bats are so on and so forth are what I would call incidental pollinators. Yeah, they are pollinators, but just by incident, they just happen to transfer the pollen from one flower to another of the same species. But your best pollinators would visit flowers of the same species. So where does that leave us? Well, bumblebees, for example, are often, and I'm going to say are really the best. First of all, because they're furrier than other bees. Bees are very good pollinators in general, but some are better than others. Look at Serotina. Well, it's almost naked in terms of hairs. So the scopa, or the place where the pollen sticks, is really confined to small parts of the bee. In Osmia lignaria, a mason bee, the hairs that count are the hairs under the abdomen. So even though they have hairy thoraxes, it's really only the hairs under the abdomen that are collecting pollen. Apis mellifera, your friend and mine, the honeybee, it's pretty hairy, and it's also a generalist. So honeybees are good pollinators, but they're not the best. And I'll show you why, or hope to at least give you something to think about as to why bumblebees are even better than honeybees. Bumblebees are certainly furrier. They have very furry thoraxes, and then their abdomen. All of this is furry, and the hairs of bees are all feathery, so that's a common characteristic of bees in general. So right away, bees have you might say, a leg up on other bees, because they're large and they're furry. So bumblebees are very hairy, very feathery. The hairs. This is a micrograph that I took through my microscope of bumblebee hairs. So you can see how not only do they have a lot of hairs, but the hairs are feathery. So I think you can see that. Bumblebees are also long season generalists, so they will visit a wide variety of flowers, and their season is long, from certainly from May through mid-October, you could find bumblebees, and they would all be uh, happy to be pollinating whatever is out there. They have a fairly rapid visitation time when they visit a flower. Yes, there are bees that have an even faster visitation time, but bees don't just hang around. If you're going to photograph a bee, a bumblebee, um, you better be ready to move fast. Um, but the most important thing is that bumblebees, and they're not alone in this, but bumblebees exhibit floral constancy. What that means is they would say, well, today I'm going to work on mountain mint. And that's all that they'll visit. That's all that that individual will visit. Uh, and until they can't find any more, and then they'll switch to another flower. So floral constancy is one of the things that makes bees in general. Not all, we don't know that all bees exhibit floral constancy, but those that do uh, are excellent pollinators because they're carrying pollen, they're visiting the same flowers, the same species of flowers. And so they're very good at transferring the pollen from the male to the female part of the same species. So those are things that you would want if you're really trying to make the excellent, the best bumblebee or the best bee. Just to add on to this, that as I said, bees, they're broad range generalists. So unlike specialists, which will tend to specialize on either one genus or sometimes one family, bees are broad range generalists, so they will pollinate a wide variety of flowers. And of course, you have flowers that will bloom only in May, and then they come and go, and then they're gone. And then you have flowers in June, and then you have your summer flowers, and then you have your early autumn flowers. So bumblebees are good because they will pollinate flowers throughout the season. They're social bees. That means they have one queen, and the colony of bumblebees can range from about 400 up to maybe as many as 1,000 workers at any one time, depending on the resources. If the resource base is constrained, then they can't make as many, and they won't make as many workers. So being a social bee, that means that you have one queen who then can scatter 1,000 up to 1,000 bees to go out and bring pollen into the nest. And in that activity, pollinate the flowers that they visit. Now, bumblebees are unusual in that they can fly at exceptionally low temperatures. And some bumblebees in Great Britain have been reported to work at temperatures as low as 4 degrees Celsius, which is about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, bumblebees can work in low light. Honeybees, of course, can work really only in strong light, but bumblebees can work in low light and often will even make their nests on the edge of forests, sometimes for the water resources, because they need to visit water resources at times. And they can also fly in the forests if there are flowers in the forests, and you can see that sometimes in the early spring. You'll have your flowers in the spring blooming, and may see honeybees in the forest. Something that really, unlike honeybees, bumblebees can work in greenhouses. So there's now a little cottage industry of making bumblebee, I guess you would call them kind of bumblebee nukes, uh, that have a queen and the beginnings of some uh, worker bees, some daughters coming out, and they can put them in greenhouses. Honeybees, by contrast, become disoriented in a greenhouse. They just aren't able to, something with their vision that they become very disoriented and can't find their way back home when they're in a greenhouse. Uh, Also, bumblebees, and this is something that should be more broadly known than it is. Bumblebees can pollinate Solanaceae flowers, whereas honeybees cannot. Um, the Solanaceae flowers, well, of course, those are pretty important vegetables like tomatoes and peppers and potatoes, tomatillas, so on and so forth. The flowers there require buzz pollination, and that's where the bee goes. So the flower is hanging upside down, the bee goes in, hangs on to that, and then it unlatches its uh, wing muscles from its wings, and it just kind of jiggles sort of, it buzzes. You can even hear it buzzing, go bzz, and that shakes the flower, and the pollen comes falling out and falls onto the hairs of the bee. So bumblebees could do that. Also, large carpenter bees. If you're thinking large carpenter bees don't serve any good purpose, well, they do. They can buzz pollinate Solanaceae flowers, and but honeybees can't. And so, if you're interested in increasing the yield of your tomatoes or your peppers, you want to encourage bumblebees rather than putting a hive of honeybees in your garden. Honeybees are good. I don't want to say they aren't good, but there are some things they can't do, and there are some things that bumblebees can do that are better. And yes, I'll take questions and comments and brickbats later on after the talk. Finally, and this is something that's just come out in the last year or so, bumblebees can learn complex activities, but wait, there's more. Bumblebees can teach. They can teach those complex activities. Let me show you this. This is in a paper. You can read it for yourself. I'm going to give the generalities of the paper. But this is a group in Great Britain. You can see it's Great Britain because they misspelled behavior. But this is and it's in a British journal. So they were using the bumblebee Bombus terrestris, which is what I call the buff-tailed bumblebee. It's a beautiful bee. It's not we don't have it in the United States to the best of my knowledge, but it can be trained, and I find this just amazing. They train this bumblebee to find this is the goal, to get the reward. The bumblebee has to move this red bar all the way over to here to get the reward. Now, bumblebees are strong and they can do that, but there's this little extra latch here that's standing in the way. So the bumblebee can't push this as long as this is in the way. So they trained it to push this out of the way. So the step in getting the reward, and this is what makes it a complex activity, is the bee had to know to push this out of the way and then either fly around or walk around and then push the red bar to get the reward. This is a group that has worked on bumblebee behavior for some time. And so they've been training bumblebees to do this, that, and the other thing. And they keep piling it on to see, well, can we teach it to do a complex activity? And the answer is yes. Here is a two-step activity that the bee has learned how to do. But wait, there's more. They took a naive bee, meaning a bee that's never seen this or has never been trained, and let it try to get the reward up to several days so they could see, well, this bee is not going to figure it out on its own. But then they put a trained bee in there, and this bee it knew how to push this out of the way and how then to push this down to get the reward. And the novel bee, on watching the trained bee, learned to do this activity. So they could take this bee out, and this bee would then know just how to get the activity. I find that unbelievably exciting because it really raises some questions. Think about it. We've often said, well, instinct is something they're hardwired to do this. And there are a lot of experiments that have been done to ask, well, how hardwired are specialist bees? And so on and so forth. I could talk about that later if you wish. But here we can see that the bee obviously hasn't been hardwired to learn this task, but it has learned it. And then this bee has learned it. So I think it raises the question, how much of what bees are doing, what the bumblebees are doing, is it because they've been hardwired to do it? They just somehow, I'm an adult, I know what to do. Or do they have to be trained by the other bees that are adults out there? I find that fascinating. And in any event, this paper, if you read it, it really is the first example of an invertebrate being able to learn a complex task and then to teach it to conspecific. So if you aren't convinced that bumblebees are actually pretty good, the rest of this talk might not be of very much use to you. But to me, these are the best, and these are the ones that we have to encourage. So let's talk about bumblebees specifically. Well, here's the diagram of the architecture of the anatomy of the bee. We all know, well, they have a head, they have a thorax, and they have an abdomen. And the females, the abdomen is segmented, and the segments are called tergal segments. And females will have 6 tergal segments, while males will have 7 tergal segments. For example, now here's Bombus griseoculus. Let's just see what it takes to identify this bee. Well, they have a head, and we can talk a little bit more about the face later, but basically to identify a bumblebee, we look at the structure of the thorax. It might have a bald spot, or it might have a black bar going all the way across it, or it may even just have, some bumblebees will just have a yellow band at the front of the thorax, and the rest of the thorax will be black. So one way of identifying the species is from the structure from the hairiness of the thorax and where the hairs are placed. Also, where the hairs are placed on the abdomen. So with Bombus griseoculus, the first tergal segment is yellow, and the second tergal segment is this kind of half-moon shaped, darkish, sometimes brown, sometimes it's reddish brown, sometimes it's almost yellow. So the colors really can vary quite a bit in that. Also, the color of the wings is also helpful. For example, Bombus griseoculus is the only common bumblebee in Northeast Ohio. that has dark wings. And so if you're wondering, gee, I'm not so sure I saw the second turtle segment, but the wings are dark. So I'm going to go with Bombus griseoculus. And there is a difference between males and females. So the females in bumblebees, they have a head with eyes, and the eyes have parallel. This part of the eye is parallel rather than being angled down. These are the complex eyes, and then of course they have the ocelli, which three dots here that help them to identify the light intensity. Then the thorax, no, this is a pin. This isn't part of the bee, but you can see that the thorax has it has a bald spot, or maybe it has just the beginning of a bar going across. And then here are the tergal segments. The first tergal segment is yellow. The second tergal segment is, in this case, it's rust brown. And then bumblebees, also like honeybees, the tarsus is flattened out into a corbiculum, and the corbiculum has hairs on it, and the bee will comb, as it collects pollen all over its body, it will comb that pollen back onto the corbiculum. And so they have two corbicula, one on each side in the rear, on the rear hind legs. Now, the males have bigger eyes, larger to find you, my dear. And they'll have a thorax that's similar, often similar to the female. Often male bumblebees are smaller than the females, and identifying feature is that the tarsus is not shaped into a corbiculum. And of course, males don't collect pollen, and even if they pick up some pollen incidentally, I'm not so sure that the males would even exhibit any floral constancy. Males usually are just going in for an energy drink. But by far the easiest way of identifying a male is to look at the face. And this is a common theme. Not all bees are like this, but it's a common theme. Many bees are like this, that the males will have more white on their face. They'll often have a white beard, or if it's really the clypeus, that's this part of the face, and they'll have white hairs on that. So even bees where the females will have a white on their face, they have a white mark on their face. The males will have a larger white mark on their face. So it's one way that you can identify that. Of course, one of the main differences between male and female bumblebees is only the females have stingers. The stinger is a modified ovipositor, and of course, males don't have ovideposit, so they don't have any of the equipment necessary to be a stinger, to have a stinger. So if you want to amaze and amuse your friends, well, find a male and catch it with your bare hands, and people will be waiting to have you writhe in pain, expecting you to be stung. And as long as it's a male, you're perfectly safe. Well, let's see. Let's continue on. Okay, well, here's the annual life cycle of a bumblebee. And of course, since it's a cycle, we could start any place. So I'm going to say, well, here are the queens for this year. And the queens for this year, 2026, really started back in September. They were minted as virgin queens or gynes, 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 um, and uh, they were they're larger bees because they were fed more. And exactly what are the signals that causes them to become queens, that causes them to become to be fed more? We still don't know, but the communications within a colony are almost certainly by way of pheromones. Uh, and so in September, we know that the gynes will start to appear, and then the males have also been out there. And as soon as the gynes come out, the males find them and fertilize them. So they will mate once, and then the new queen is no longer a virgin. Will look for a winter home. She'll never go back to the nest after that. Instead, she looks for a winter home, which could be a mouse hole or maybe a snake hole, something like that in the ground, where she can overwinter in away from the rest of the bees. Everybody else in the colony dies, so only the queen uh, lives, and she lives for only 1 year. And this generally happens around October. She finds a winter home. If you want the fancy name, it's a hiberniculum. She's hibernating in the hiberniculum, and she'll hibernate there. She doesn't freeze, but her metabolism goes down very low. And then in April, she comes out of the hiberniculum and starts hunting around for a place for her nest. And all of this happens then as I say, around April. And what you'll see uh, is she will be flying very close to the ground. And here's a video. Uh, Maybe you can see her flying around about 6 inches over dried leaves. Every now and then she'll disappear under the leaves. Yeah, is this the right place? I don't think so. She'll come out and fly around again. Um, I'll play that video again so that you can see how fast she's moving. Um, and what she's hunting for. So one of the take-home lessons here is you want to make sure if you want to encourage bumblebees that you're encouraging some habitat, not only habitat as flowers, but habitat as summer nesting and habitat as hibernicula. So, ooh, watch this again. There she is flitting around. Okay, so she now has found her a place to nest, and that happens in late April or so. Um, and up until that time, one of the projects I was involved in was to figure out, well, to identify the beta species, and then to ask, well, has it found a nest or not? And if it has found a nest, if it has not yet found a nest, then she will just be nectaring. And what that means is she's just very quickly visiting flowers and getting some energy drink, getting some nectar, but she's not collecting pollen. And so you can see this. There she is, flitting around on my azalea. I'll show that one again in case you missed it. You can see how fast she's visiting. It's pretty clear she's not collecting any pollen. And she's going to collect it again. And So you can see here, this queen bee is Bombus impatiens, because you can see just only the yellow on only the first tergal segment. And she's nectaring because she's not collecting any pollen. Whereas this bee, also Bombus impatiens, is collecting pollen because she's collected this nice gob of bee bread. It's pollen then mixed with some of her saliva that then she can pack onto her corbiculum. And you'll see that usually they look like they have saddlebags. They can get so filled with pollen. And so that's how we can tell, has she found a nest? Because she doesn't start collecting pollen until she has found a nest and collects pollen and then lays, long story short, she'll then lay an egg on that glob of pollen. And different species have slightly different behaviors in terms of how they'll lay that egg and just what kind of support it will have. But she doesn't start collecting pollen until she has gotten to a nest and made a little room down in there, and then has said, well, okay, now it's time to get some daughters. So she lays an egg. The egg is fertilized. Fertilized eggs turn into females. Unfertilized eggs become males. And this is a common theme. All bees are on what's called the XO system, meaning the females are XX and the males are X, nothing. So she will fertilize those, and then the daughters will come out shortly afterwards. And the first daughters are usually much smaller because they haven't been fed, they've kind of been fed just the minimum amount to make a bee, because she's trying to get as many daughters out there as she can, as quickly as she can. So the daughter bees, the daughter bumblebees are smaller. So let's go through the whole cycle here. So the queen, once she has gotten daughters, once she has gone out of the nest and gotten some pollen and laid eggs to make daughters, she never leaves the nest again. She will die in that nest, as will all of the daughters that are in the nest at that time. So she lays a fertilized egg. The fertilized egg then hatches and becomes a larva. The larva, there are 5 molts in the larva, so the larva will grow and then it will molt and expand and grow a little bit more. So after the 5th molt, it becomes a pupa, makes a small cocoon, and will then metamorphose and then hatch out into an adult. And once it's an adult, then it goes out and starts collecting pollen and comes back and forth into the nest. And that happens, so this would be what's happening in summer. And then in September, things change a little bit. First of all, she stops fertilizing all of the eggs. So remember, I said unfertilized eggs then become males. So somewhere around September, you start to see males appearing. Remember, you can see them because they have the white face, and often they're a little bit smaller than the females. Then also, at about that same time, the males come first, but then shortly thereafter, you'll start to see gynes, and the males don't let the gynes remain virgin for very long. They fertilize them, they mate with them, very quickly. And then once the gyne has been fertilized, she then no longer goes into the nest and will then on her own look for a hiberniculum. So the cycle is then complete. Well, let's see what species can we find here in Northeast Ohio? Which are the most common ones are the three on the left, and the ones that you see less frequently are the ones on the right. And there are some other bees that you see, but it's a very good day when you see them because you don't see them too often. So I'm just confining this discussion to what's found in Northeast Ohio. I'm impressed that there are people from Arizona and from places far away where you would have different species. There are about 1,200 species of bumblebees in the world. And so if you're not in Northeast Ohio, you're on your own. And I'll point out some good resources for finding bees, at least in the eastern United States. So the ones that we have here in Northeast Ohio are the common eastern bumblebee, which is very common and which you will easily find if you're looking for bumblebees. Then almost as common are the two-spotted bumblebee. The Bombus, the common eastern has yellow only on the first tergal segment, whereas the two-spotted bumblebee will have yellow on the first and the second tergal segments, and the spots on the second tergal segment can be large, as they are with this bee, or sometimes they can be much smaller, just like that. So there's a fair amount of variety with the two-spotted bumblebee. And then the brown-belted bumblebee has yellow on the first tergal segment and has this kind of orange or brown half-moon shape on the second tergal segment. The yellow bumblebee, a beautiful bee, if you want to see. I can't picture that people would not totally fall in love with bumblebees when they see a yellow bumblebee, because the first 5 tergal segments are all yellow. And it's a magnificent looking bee because the thorax is also yellow, fairly yellow. It has a black spot in the middle. Then the American bumblebee has a thorax with just the front part of the thorax has a yellow band, and then the first and second tergal segments are all yellow. And if you want the Latin names, the common eastern bumblebee is Bombus impatiens. The two-spotted bumblebee is Bombus bimaculatus. The brown-belted bumblebee is Bombus griseoculus. The yellow bumblebee, the all-yellow bumblebee, is Bombus fervidus. And the American bumblebee is Bombus pennsylvanicus. And for some reason, the correct spelling of the species is different from the spelling of the state. The spelling of the state has 2 N's, Penn, Sylvania, and the correct spelling of the species is only 1 N, Pen, sylvanicus. So Bombus pennsylvanicus. Well, can you ever be confused? Well, don't be. Yes, it is possible to be confused. I've been confused. Everybody else has been confused at one time or another by these two bees. They're very similar in size. They appear at about the same time, and they're both generalists, so they'll even be hitting the same flowers. This is Bombus impatiens, and this is Xylocopa virginica. This is the common eastern bumblebee, and this is the large carpenter bee. And the difference that's easy to see once you know what you're looking for is that the Bombus impatiens has a very furry abdomen, whereas the large carpenter bee has a very, very shiny abdomen. So we say it has a shiny hiney, and you can see how shiny it is. That's my reflection taking the picture in that. It's just amazing how shiny those bees, the abdomen of a large carpenter bee is. So no need to be confused. You just have to look around and see, well, does it have a furry abdomen or a very shiny hiney? Well, are bumblebee populations in Ohio stable, increasing, or decreasing? And the answer is yes. By that I mean, well, the populations appear to be fairly stable. Bombus impatiens, on the other hand, appears to be increasing in occurrence and in being found. Bombus bimaculatus and Bombus chrysioculus appear to be steady. And the Bombus fervidus, the all yellow bumblebee, seems to be declining, seems to be harder to find. I used to know of sites where I could count on finding Bombus fervidus. And yeah, I haven't been so lucky in the last couple of years. Bombus pennsylvanicus, the all-American bumblebee, has become very uncommon in these parts. And then the famous Bombus affinis has been extirpated from Ohio. I understand you can still find Bombus affinis in parts of Minnesota, but here in Ohio, it has apparently been extirpated. It hasn't been seen for at least 5 years now. And that's with everybody looking, because you realize, well, you would be a local hero if you found Bombus affinis. So everybody's looking at who looks at bumblebees is hoping one day to find Bombus affinis, but so far, no luck. Well, what are the causes for these declines? Almost everybody feels that the major cause of the decline is loss of habitat. When I was a boy, which obviously was a long time ago, we had a lot of open fields. We just called them empty lots. Well, now a lot of those empty lots are mowed down into grass, or at least kept mowed low, so that the flowers don't appear, or maybe only clover appears, which is not a particularly good source of pollen. So a lot of the reasons for declines of bees in general and bumblebees in particular is loss of habitat. But there have been several studies that I'm aware of where they have asked the question, a lot of people are keeping honeybees. There's so many honeybees that when you go out to try to catch wild bees, and a wild bee is any bee except the honeybee. The honeybee is a domesticated animal. It depends heavily on what humans provide. And it would be very unusual if you found a honeybee nest out in the wild. It would probably be what we call feral rather than wild, meaning that it was kept and then it escaped being kept and has found lodging in a hollow tree or something like that. And so people have worried, myself included, are there too many honeybees around to the extent that they are putting competitive pressure on other bees? Because honeybees they're good pollinators and they hit a lot of flowers, and they can even be fairly aggressive. So, as you know, if you've kept honeybees, they can be very aggressive. And not only can they be aggressive to the beekeeper, but primarily to other bees. So the questions have been asked in various studies. Uh, is there evidence that they are putting competitive pressure on native bees? And some studies have said no. Other studies have said yes. And the way I interpret that is, well, it's possible. And I think it's a question worth considering. Um, if people are keeping honeybees for the honey, then you have no choice, because in North America, the only bee that really makes excess honey is Apis mellifera. In the whole world, all of the thousands of species that we have, there are 6 species that are known to make honey where you could collect the honey and use it for your own purposes or sell it. There are 6 species. I understand that one of the best is called the stingless honeybee. It's in South America. And of course, it's very appealing. Oh, it's stingless. Wow, that's nice. But I understand that it really can give you quite a bite. So remember, some bees can bite even if they don't sting very well. And they wouldn't live up here anyway. So if you're keeping honeybees for the honey, then okay, you have to keep honeybees. If, on the other hand, you're keeping honeybees to solve the decline in pollination activities, first of all, it's very expensive. I wrote an article for the environmental newsletter here in Kent, making the case against keeping honeybees, not the least of which is very expensive, and you have to know what you're doing. It's not just something you can say, well, put out the hive box and I got a nuke and threw it in there and they seem to be flying around okay. There's a lot more to keeping honeybees intelligently than that, and it takes a while. It takes at least several years to learn how to keep honeybees well. So I would encourage people to think, well, are there other bees? If all I want to do is, do what I can to increase honeybee or to increase pollination activities, the answer is yes. Here are some alternatives to keeping Apis mellifera. For example, mason bees, Osmia lignaria, or Osmia cornifrons. You can buy both of those. They're specialists on rosaceae, and especially if you're trying to pollinate cherries or early apples, Osmia will fly sooner than honeybees will. And they're very rapid in their pollination activities. And so some orchards now are buying the mason bee cocoons. You can buy the cocoons. And then when the cherry blossoms start to appear, then you take the cocoons out of your refrigerator, not your freezer, but your refrigerator, as long as you're keeping them fairly cool, such as in a refrigerator, they will live and will not come out of their cocoons. As soon as you pull them out of the cocoons, out of the refrigerator, the cocoons hatch and the bees fly around and form. They're not a social bee. They're a specialist solitary bee. So they'll build their own nest and so on and so forth. And they're fascinating to watch and completely they're enjoyable to watch and to see if you can keep them. So collect the cocoons and see if you can get them through the next year and so on and so forth. If you or your neighbors are raising alfalfa, well, you might consider trying to keep some Megachile rotundata, which is called the alfalfa bee. And it has been shown that the alfalfa bee will increase the yields by 15-fold over just other native pollinators. And then there's the blueberry bee, the Hepapoda laboriosa. When you see the blueberry blooms, see if you can find Hepapoda laboriosa. And if you can encourage that, then it will increase the yield on blueberries. So there are a lot of things you can do to increase pollination activities beyond just keeping honeybees. And as someone, not myself, but someone else said, well, trying to solve the pollination problem by keeping honeybees is the same as trying to solve the decline in avian populations by keeping chickens. Chickens are also a domesticated animal. And so the analogy, I think, holds, and it's in any event, it's interesting, a little bit comical, and something that you can remember and think about. And I'm sure I'll get comments, so don't be bashful. I've heard some of them before. Well, what's the corrective for loss of habitat? Well, I guess you'd say, well, the loss of habitat is loss of flowers. I guess plant flowers that bumblebees prefer. Problem is, we don't know which flowers bumblebees prefer. So there was the study, a research study done at University of Maryland by the doctoral student Janan El-Hafnawi, and under the direction of Sam Droege, USGS, there in Maryland. And this was called the Ask a Bumblebee. So if you want to know what flowers do bumblebees prefer, well, instead of guessing, ask a bumblebee. Well, how do you ask a bumblebee? Well, here's what we did. And yes, it was every bit as complex as it sounds. So once a week from May through October, this was in 2022 and 2023, we would find a field. So you'd have to find a field with a variety of species of flowers. And then you set a transect or a path or something so that you would say, well, along this path, and I'm going to visit it now. But first of all, I'm going to identify each of the flowers to species. And then, because I'm not a botanist, we had to take pictures and submit those pictures to iNaturalist or to other sources to verify that and identify that flower to species. Okay, then secondly, having done that, then we had to estimate the relative abundance of the flowers by, dividing up the pathway into little chunks and then saying, well, how many little chunks did this flower occur in? And then how many flowers were there in that little chunk? So we had to estimate the relative abundance of the flowers and then rank the relative abundance, one being the most abundant, two being the second most abundant, and so on and so forth. And often we would find 7 or 8 species of flowers. So this wasn't this at least for me, I'm not a botanist. For me, this was not a casual task. Um, but this was just the beginning. Having gotten that far, then we had to walk along that path for 30 minutes, and it's timed. So you kind of set your stopwatch for 30 minutes and walk along the path and observe the bumblebees that you saw. And saw, well, which flower species are they on? Identify the bumblebee to species, if possible, and then also identify the bumblebee to gender. Is it male or female, if possible? Now, those things weren't always possible, but with some practice, you could pretty much make some good observations. And then the data sheets included cases where you couldn't identify the species or couldn't identify the gender. So one observation would look like this. We would take the date, the time, the temperature, the GPS coordinates, and then identify to the best of our ability the flower and the bee species. You can see it's Bombus impatiens. It just has the first tergal segment is yellow, and that it's a female. She's collecting pollen, and she's a female worker. So that would be one observation. Now, in 30 minutes, this is a data sheet that I collected. And so here you can see that species one is Bombus impatiens. So if it's a female, I'd put a mark here. If it was on spotted Joe Pye weed, then I'd put a mark here. It's a female. If it was a male, I would have put it here. Species 2 was Bombus bimaculatus. Species 3 was Bombus griseoculus. And those were the 3 species of bees that I had. But there are also a lot of carpenter bees out that day. So species 5, the 5th column, was Xylocopa virginica. And you can see there were a lot, there were a lot of carpenter bees, a lot of female carpenter bees out that day. And there were also some males on clustered mountain mint and some males on male Bombus impatiens, males on the pink turtlehead. And then these are the rankings. So these are the little individual plots in which I found each of these species of flower. And so this is the floral rank of them. And then I'd send that data sheet in, as well as I think something on the order of 100 other observers throughout the eastern United States. Then those were compiled using some fairly sophisticated statistics. And then at the end, then they compiled it all and said, well, these are the ones that are the best, second best, and middle score, and then the ones that really didn't score very well for bumblebees. So let's see, if we're trying to encourage the bumblebees, well, we'd want to plant vetches and giant hyssops, St. John's worts, culver roots, lavenders, brambles, milkweeds, American asters, beard tongues, bee balms, goldenrods, mountain mints. Those are all, and cat mints, those are all species that they really seem to like based on this wide-ranging study. Species that, well, they'd visit them, but, you know, they could do better. Things like oreganos and sweet clovers, turtleheads, chicory, cosmos, hostas, and things that they really didn't like at all, or didn't like very much, and would do only if they didn't have anything else. There were cinquefoils and fleabanes, daisies, oxalis, smartweeds. carnations, yarrows, spurges. Now, that's not to say that these might be useful to other bees, but we're just talking about encouraging bumblebees now. And so these are the species, the ones shown in green, that we would want to encourage and want to plant more to increase habitat for bumblebees. And as you increase habitat, I would expect, and everybody else would expect, that you'd get more bumblebees coming around. Bumblebees, being a large bee, can fly a long distance, and so you don't have to count on them having to make their summer nest in your yard. You just if you plant it, they will come. At least that's been my experience. But providing habitat for bumblebees, as I mentioned before, it certainly means providing the flowers that they prefer and flowers that will flower throughout the seasons. So if you plant a flower that blooms in the spring, also plant some flowers that bloom in the midsummer and flowers that bloom in the early fall, like goldenrods. But also, besides planting flowers, also allow areas in your yard, if you can, for hibernatoria, and also areas for summer nests, meaning don't clean up your yard. If you clean up your yard, or if you put a lot of mulch around, they really don't like that. Bees prefer they prefer my kind of yard, which is we're on 3.5 acres and with a forest on the one side, and usually there's a stream that runs through it, so there's a water course, and bees do like that. Bumblebees really do like that. So we have a nice yard. We're not in a homeowners association, so we don't have to clean it up to someone else's mandates. And so these are things to think about. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you things to think about as you do them. For example, if you want to increase bee habitat, well, you can see there's some hostas and some flowers around, and here's a lawn, and I think these are mums back here, and well, that's nice. There's some flowers there, and they're bordering the lawn. But when a bee sees a lawn, this is what she sees. She sees the desert, and so what to do? Well, here's what I suggest, and this is all part of some thoughts from Doug Ptolemy. Instead of planting flowers to border your lawn, make your lawn border your flowers, so that you have large patches of flowers in your lawn. And if you mow paths through them, then it looks structured instead of just looking like, you just let it go. It looks structured if you provide pathways through it. And as I say, if you're out, we live in a rural district, so no one cares what it looks like. But if you do this, I think it looks fine. So with that, I would like to thank my teachers, Denise Ellsworth and Olivia Carroll, two people who they're wonderful people besides being wonderful teachers. And Olivia wrote a book. If you're interested in bees and you don't have this book, I highly recommend it. This is, as a professor, I would every now and then have to judge the adequacy of a textbook. And this is by far the best textbook I have ever seen in my life. It's one where if you don't know what a bee is, is it different? How is a wasp? How can you identify a wasp from a bee, from a fly? So on and so forth. It can be very tricky because there are a lot of mimics around running around in the world, but Olivia's book really shows you the difference. So you can go from not knowing anything to knowing a fair amount about bee biology and bee taxonomy. She goes through it family by family. It's a wonderful book. And then if you are looking for a field guide, a good field guide, this is an excellent one, The Common Bees of Eastern North America, with apologies to those of you who aren't living in Eastern North America. But I think Olivia has told me that she's coming out with one in the Western North America. And she herself is from New Mexico, I believe. So her emphasis in her research has really been in the West. And you might ask, well, if you were really looking for a wide variety of bees, where would you look? Well, often we would think, where's the highest species density, the highest, greatest variety of species? Well, it's often in the tropics, but not with bees. The widest variety of bees is in the desert. And so Olivia has done a lot of her research in the desert because you have a lot of specialist bees, bees that come out only when the flowers that they specialize on bloom. And that can be tied to when the rain falls and so on and so forth. That leads to the bloom. So Olivia's books are, those are for all bees. Then if you want to see one for bumblebees, this is a very good book by Sheila Kalla and others, Leif Robertson, Richardson, and Paul Williams. Very good, and it goes through bumblebee by bumblebee in the eastern United States. And there are, let's see, there are about 20 bumblebees that she refers to. And the books look like this. She gives the abundance distribution and gives some fun facts about them. Very, very nice book, and it's spiral bound. You can take it into the field. My advice would be to have two copies, one that you take into the field because it might get messed up, and another that you keep in your library for future reference. So with that, I'm anxious for Sheila to tell me some questions that you all might have. And I'll at least try to give some interesting answers.
All right, and we do have a few of them. So going back through the chat, let's see. I saw one asking about how many eggs does the female bumblebee lay usually?
Oh, I have no idea. But if she's, I would, the daughters live about a month to 6 weeks. So when they come out, they're not going to live all season. The early daughters will only be around for about a month. It's very similar to honeybees. And so if she's keeping a colony of, say, up to 1,000 bees, she must be laying something on the order of at least 10,000 eggs, 10 to 20,000 eggs. But that's just a guess. I mean, that's what we in science land call a back of the envelope wild guess.
Got it. So do you have an opinion on bee hotels, like for the solitary bees?
Well, yes, I do have an opinion on those. Most of them are not worth the exorbitant price that they're charging. For example, with mason bees, the mason bee hotel is often less than 6 inches long. The problem with that is that when the mason bee uh, lays eggs, she fertilizes the eggs up until the time that she gets toward the front of the uh, tube, but her front is not our front. So uh, so you want to make sure that the length of the uh, cylinder that you're using to attract a mason bee is something more on the order of 10 inches, because when she'll fertilize the eggs at the back, and then as she gets to what she says, well, I'm getting to the front, then she stops fertilizing the eggs. So that means that the unfertilized eggs turn into males.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the tube is too short, you'll end up with a pile of males, which aren't going to go anywhere.
Got it.
Yeah.
Will queens mate with drones from her own nest?
Um, I'm trying to think of studies that have looked at that. Um, yeah, I'm going to have to be honest and say I don't really know on that, and I'm reluctant to guess. Um, Ideally, you would expect that the answer to that would be no, just for the sake of genetic diversity. Um, and sometimes there are inhibitions that keep them from being able to mate with their uh, hive mates.
Mhm.
But yes, I really don't. Yeah, I'd have to say I don't know on that.
And so you highlighted the bees of Northeast Ohio. Are those similar bees to what you might see in other areas of Ohio too?
Oh, yes, yeah, yeah. You can find Bombus impatiens throughout Ohio. Um, we did one of the other research studies that I was involved in was the Ohio Bee Survey, where we were trying to see what is the range and phenology of all the bees that we could catch using bee traps. And if you're using a bee trap, uh, using which is a bowl with some it's a bowl of water that will attract bees, uh, but it has some soap in it. So if they land on it, they'll drown, and then you come along and collect them and identify them. But bee traps of that sort are biased towards getting only small bees. So we need to do something similar with the larger bees that you would catch by net. And net survey is biased towards big bees because you catch what you can see, and some of the bees are real little. And even with a lot of practice, you can have difficulty catching small bees. Not that it can't be done, but it would still be biased towards larger bees. And we need to do that survey. The Ohio Bee Survey was very successful. There are 88 counties in Ohio, and we had observatories uh, in 85 of those 88 counties. And in some counties, we had more than one observatory.
Mhm.
And in each observatory, we had to go out once a week, put out bee traps for 24 hours. So you had to go out one day and come back 24 hours later and catch it, because some bees are more biased, like to get up early in the morning. Some will fly all day long, and some like to be in the late afternoon. So you have to leave them out for 24 hours. Then we'd collect those and send them in, and long story short, and then of course once they're in, then you have to identify them. And so we had a very good uh, super technician who was very adept at identifying bees. But a lot of us, myself included, sorted bees out, and Melissa got to the point where she trusted me to do serotinus, and even there, it took some learning on my part. There are 4 species of serotina here, and then you have to also gender them. So that means there are eight things I had to learn how to identify, and that's just one genus, you know.
Mhm.
So that was a very good study. We collected over 56,000 bees, and Melissa made sure that each one of them was identified 2 species. And
Nice.
just an amazing amount of work.
So on that note, the video of the queen bee looking for a nest, so Neil was under the impression that they needed bare soil. Is this species dependent that she was looking in leaf material instead?
I'm not aware that any of them like bare soil.
Oh.
Um, I think they like to have it covered over a little bit. And all the bumblebees that I have worked with uh, seem to look for places such as I showed there. Um, yeah, I know that they really dislike mulch.
Mm.
They don't like mulch. They prefer dried leaves.
And are they always nesting in the ground?
Yes, all bumblebees are ground nesters. Yeah, unlike honeybees, which are cavity nesters, and that's why you can build a hive and put your frames in, and the frames are spaced at just the right spacing. Uh, Honeybees like that sort of thing. And that's why when you have a swarm, if you have an empty hive, well, they may swarm right into that empty hive. I've had that happen a couple of times. Um, they just look around for the space. They like cavities that are spaced just right. And so if you have one that's all set up, they'll go for it.
Okay.
But yeah, all bumblebees are ground nesters, and most bees are ground nesters. That's not to say that there aren't a fair number of cavity nesters, but most bees are ground nesters.
Okay. So when you have a whole lawn full of white clover, do the bombas still see a desert? Or is that a little bit better?
Well, there's probably, well, they will visit the clover if that's the question. Uh, but they're sure not getting much. Clover doesn't have much protein value to it.
Oh,
It's not a particularly good source of pollen. It is a source of pollen, but it's not a good source of pollen. Uh, so they might look at it as slim pickings.
got it.
Yeah.
And another question came up if we can have the list of the flowers that you presented. And yes, I will take
Mhm.
that and make it a list form that will be sent out to everybody, or at least check our Facebook for that. Another question is, how is a queen selected?
How is the queen selected?
Mhm.
Um, well, I think it's very similar to honeybees. I mean, a lot of what we know about bees comes from what we know about honeybees. Uh, and I'm going to, for the sake of this question, I'm going to say that as far as we know, it's pheromone controlled. Uh, and the difference between a regular worker bee and a queen is the amount that they've been fed. So, for a long time, we thought royal jelly with honeybees was something special. It's just a lot of the same. And so, the more the larva is fed, the larger the bee will be. And somehow that also must turn on a suite of genes that allow her to behave as a queen rather than as a regular worker bee. um, yeah, the real answer is we don't fully know just what the cues are. Uh, we do know that it's very regular. That you can. She doesn't just happen to overfeed some larvae right away and make competitive queens. Uh, we know that the gynes really come out pretty much on program, pretty much on schedule. And it is species specific. Some species come out sooner than others, and but for any given species, it's fairly specific. And I would expect that it's based on day length, because a lot of the bees are very sensitive to the length of the day. Um,
And I think the last question that I see is once the female bumblebee has obtained the sperm for fertilizing her eggs, does she go out and create her own hiberniculum and then the process continues for her female offspring?
No, the only nest that she creates, meaning digs with her jaws and her legs and all, uh, is the summer nest. The hiberniculum is generally a hole that she finds, a mouse hole or something of that sort.
Oh, okay. Oh, and we did just get one more.
Okay.
Can they raise extra queens commercially like they do for honeybees?
Uh, I don't know if they can raise extra queens. I do know that in the laboratory, they are able to make colonies of bumblebees. And since they are so useful in greenhouses, you can buy what in honeybee lingo you would call a nuke with queen and some workers in it. Uh, so if you're interested in that, you should be able to hunt around uh, and find some source of bumblebees that you could purchase and play with.
Great. All right. Well, I think, Bob, that is all of the questions that I see. Thank you for sharing your knowledge about bumblebees. This was really informative, really interesting. And I know I'm not the only one who's now going to try and go catch a bumblebee, male bumblebee, and make sure that it's a male. Um, and for everybody else, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you in 2 more weeks.
Yeah. And thank you for inviting me once again. I enjoyed it. Bye bye.
Bye.